Hi friends, my name is Joel and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing the interview that I got to conduct with George M. Johnson a couple of weeks ago. If you had watched my romance reading vlog, you would have seen that I was getting prepared for my very first author interview and I was really nervous, and it was definitely a nerve-wracking time because I've never done an author interview before, but I got to interview George M. Johnson, who is the author of All Boys Aren't Blue, and I was just very fortunate that Penguin asked me to do this, and I just can't wait to share with you the amazing person that George M. Johnson is. And so, without further ado, and without dragging this on any further, let's get into it. So, hello everyone, and welcome to my very first author interview on this channel. Today I am joined with George M. Johnson. Their pronouns are they, them, and we're going to be discussing All Boys Aren't Blue, their memoir-manifesto. And hi, if you would like to just introduce us to your book and tell us some key things about it.
Yeah, so my name is George M. Johnson. Again, my pronouns are they, them. My book is called All Boys Aren't Blue, a memoir manifesto. It's behind me as well. The book discusses my life from birth until age 21. It is a book about my identity, the struggles I had with my identity growing up in a Black family that even though they didn't have the resources or the language, still supported me and loved me and affirmed me. It didn't necessarily stop many of the traumas or the experiences that I had to deal with, but I always had a place to call home. And so in the book, it really is my journey through my own eyes of being this effeminate boy in a world that really didn't understand me, and living in a world where I really fully didn't understand myself. And yeah, just my journey through discovery of identity and masculinity and all of the things that young Black boys deal with already being othered in society, and then having an additional layer of oppression with gender and sexuality, and how that all played out in my life.
Yeah, I definitely resonated with when I was reading All Boys Aren't Blue as well. Like, as someone who is also a queer Black boy, I think that it's definitely hard to kind of exist with the intersectionality of our identities. And I just loved the way that you were so raw and emotional within the entire thing, and how you just were very upfront with all the things that happened in your life. And I can see that it's also touched like the hearts of many. And we're really excited to have it come to the UK on March 4th. And given the reception that it's received in the United States, how do you feel now about the story coming to the UK? Do you have any doubts about it coming to the UK, or did you have any doubts about it being published as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I felt really good going into it, and then the pandemic hit, and then wasn't really sure how the book was going to do. You know, my book came out at the very beginning of uh, we were maybe a month into lockdowns when my book came out. And so at that point, unemployment had hit like its highest rate since the Great Depression. Bookstores were not open. There were no, like you literally could not go to an independent bookstore. And I don't even think you could go to Barnes and Noble at the time. So there were no places to even buy books except like online, and have them shipped to you. And so wasn't really sure how the story was going to pan out, how the book was going to really get out there, how long it was even going to take for the book to get out there. But I was confident in the story that I wrote. And so, you know, really excited with how well it's been received here in the United States and globally. Like, even though the release wasn't a global release, a lot of people across the world have heard about the book. And, you know, I get fan emails from Australia and Brazil and the UK,
Yeah.
even without having the, you know, releases in those areas and territories yet. So it was really exciting when we got the offer from Penguin to distribute it in the United Kingdom, because, you know, I always say, like, you know, it's not that, like, as Black people, anti-Blackness is a global issue. And so even though in the UK, it's like, you know, I think some people think like racism doesn't exist everywhere. And it's like, well, no, yeah. it exists. It just looks different. And
yeah, different forms.
Where you are, right? Like, we know, like, in the United States, police brutality isn't necessarily like something that Black folks who live in maybe other countries across the world, they may not experience like how we experience police brutality, but it doesn't negate the fact that they also experience racism and homophobia and transphobia the same way, in many of the same ways that we do. And so I think with All Boys Aren't Blue going into a territory like that, it'll actually showcase how universal many of our stories are, and how we are much more alike than we are different. Even if we are separated just by different territories, our stories are very much similar. And so I'm excited to see how many people, just across the world now, since it's going to go specifically into those locations, how closely related many of our stories are. But I think it's going to do well in the United Kingdom. So
Yeah, I agree because, like, I think when I read it as well, I resonate with a lot of the things that you were saying, and I noticed it a lot where I speak to a lot of like my friends from the United States and other countries as well. Like, racism isn't just like a territorial issue, like you just said. It affects everyone in many different ways, and like the things that we do to take care of ourselves can also apply to a bunch of different people. And so it's all about kind of ensuring that we're supporting each other in this massive wider network. And I definitely think that since your book is coming to the United Kingdom, it can definitely help those young queer Black kids also come to terms with their own identities as well, which is amazing. And leading on to like surrounding the publication, there was a period of time in young adult publication where the only novels being published by Black authors were ones surrounding trauma and pain. And obviously, your book also touches upon this in certain aspects. And did you ever worry that people would only view your novel, your memoir, as like one about only pain and nothing about the joys that you experience as well?
I wasn't worried about it because I made sure I wrote the book so that you couldn't. I mean, I guess
Mm-hmm.
if you were just one of those type of people who could only see it for that, then I guess you could try and cherry pick those particular parts. But I felt like I wrote the book in a way to showcase the totality of my experience, the totality of uh, who I was, what I was, even in the midst of trauma, there was still joy happening,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of like one of those universal things where, even in the midst of bad days, you can have good moments happen in days that are bad, or you can have bad moments happen in days that overall were good. And so I think for me, it was more showcasing, like, even within the traumatic moments, there was healing, there was love, there was other things that were happening outside of the traumatic experience. And so I didn't really worry too much about that. I think I worried more so about if anyone was concerned about like if I was romanticizing
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, because I think there's a balance, there's a delicate line that you have to kind of walk anytime you're talking about trauma from a restorative lens, which is what I always aim to do, like a restorative healing lens. I think it can, if you lean too heavy away from it, sometimes it can lean into like the romanticizing of it. But I think I did a good job of like balancing truth in the totality of the situations and experiences. And so I think many people, even when they were reading through the trauma, left with a sense of healing and a sense
Mm-hmm.
of being restored by the end of the story.
Yeah, I love that. And it's definitely something that I felt as well as I was reading through it. Like, no matter like how painful it did get, I felt like throughout it, I was being like mentored and guided through this. And it was like, it's okay. And like, there are better days ahead. Like, it's painful now, but good days are coming. And I think that was like one of the main messages from your novel as a whole. And the title as well, All Boys Aren't Blue, resonated with me a lot. As you mentioned, I think near the end, that blue doesn't just mean the typical designation of what is male. And things like the patriarchy and toxic masculinity try to like reinforce this on our society. But as we are well aware, the presentation of gender is like a vast spectrum. Like, we don't have to conform to the binaries that society like puts in place for us. And as I'm kind of really also obsessed with titles, what made you kind of solidify All Boys Aren't Blue as the title for your memoir?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like when you're going through like titling of a book, you kind of go through a few different things, like a few different thoughts. Like I even like what I originally proposed the book as is not what the final title is not. It was
Oh,
not All Boys on Blue. Like the original title was what was it? The original title was Smile Black Boy Smile. Um,
oh,
and so that
interesting.
was actually the original title. And you sign with a publisher and they're like, we like the title, but can you, give us some other suggestions? And so, I was just kind of going through like, well, what is this book really about? At the end of the day, like, what is the message I'm really trying to convey? And All Boys Aren't Blue really hit me as I was just thinking through, like, where I think the main thing I was thinking through was like, where does it start? Like,
Mhm.
where does the titling of who we are start? And it really starts when you think about like gender reveals and baby showers, and it really starts at that moment, like at that moment when that blue balloon goes up, or that blue smoke comes out, or the pink smoke comes out. That's really when everybody starts to shift their mind focus on how they're going to rear a child and how they're going to treat a child. I mean, from the parents to the grandparents to the aunts to the uncles, they're already thinking like, oh, we got to make sure he can box, or oh, we got to make sure she um does skating, or like you're already starting to like think
Yeah.
about the things that a boy needs, things versus the things that a girl will need, very, 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 very early on, before birth. And
Mhm.
so I think when I said All Boys Aren't Blue, it was literally to kind of just give like the notion of people to just take a step back and think about it, because once the child is born and the child starts to navigate and show who they are, you kind of have to nurture that. And, placing so much weight on a pathway for a child that has not told you who they are,
Yeah.
I think is something that we just need to start interrogating a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
totally
the.
Yeah, I totally agree with you though. Like, I think as well, when I was like a young kid, like, I feel like my parents would try and like force me in like one certain direction. I'd always like reject that and go do other things. Like, I remember my mum tried to get me to play football, and I was kind of like, I'll try it, but I was never really good at it. I only did it so that she would just stop like harking at me because I was friends with girls a lot, and like it wasn't typically the boy thing to do. And I think it took a lot of unlearning for my mum to kind of unlearn like the attitudes that she was enforcing onto me about like complying to masculinity. And like she just lets me be who I want to be now, which is great and amazing. But it did take that period of like adjustment and like unlearning. And I definitely think that it can be done, like with you say with like the gender reveals and a bunch of stuff that we do that conforms to like certain aspects of gender that we can just dismantle and take away.
Yeah.
And um, as I'm like talking about like how I resonated, I remember that you mentioned like how a lot of this stuff that happened to you happened before you were 21. And like I'm turning 21 this Thursday, which like kind of put me in this weird like state of like, wow, like all of that happened to you. And then me coming up like now to my 21st birthday, it's like what's happened to me so far and like all the things that I've been through. And it must have been really tough for you to write this as well, because you're writing it from like that um, revisionist lens, as you mentioned. And as you're writing, did you find it to be a form of catharsis as you were like getting everything onto the page?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we bury things and we assume that we have gotten past them, and we really haven't gotten past them yet. And so I think that was really one of the things that I learned, was like I wasn't past or over a lot of the things that I thought I had healed myself from. And so in many ways, I was healing myself as I was trying to tell this story to ensure that others, one, didn't have to go through many of the things that I went through, and two, um, giving them a roadmap. Giving people a
Mm-hmm.
roadmap, and giving people healing who had already been through many of the things that I had been through, and kind of showing them how I processed it and how I got through it. And so, yeah, I mean, it really changed, I guess, how I navigate now. I'm a lot prouder. I'm a lot more unapologetic about who I am and what my existence has always been. And so, in yeah, I mean, the book really did all of those things for me too. And I think a lot of people get to watch me now, kind of like blossom and be this
Mm-hmm.
person who has become like a possibility model for so many others. And so, I don't take that lightly. But yeah, the book definitely had a lot of healing
Mm-hmm.
benefits for me as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely like agree with you. And the fact that now, like from reading it, I'm able to kind of live like prouder and like live more authentically. Because I think you mentioned this in one of the articles you recently wrote from Mike about how you wanted to like reclaim your adolescence and you wanted to kind of take those teenage years back because of the intersectionality of your identity, causing you to hide parts of yourself from different groups of people. And it's something that like I particularly faced as well when I was a teenager, and I had to like hide parts of myself away so that people wouldn't be prejudiced against me. And whilst society is changing now, there are still some like dangers for young Black teens in society. And because you mentioned that you also want to be like a role model and a kind of ambassador for living authentically and living your true self, what advice would you give to young Black teens who want to kind of live authentically and just be proud of who they are?
Yeah, you know, it's tough, especially for younger Black teens who are heterosexuals. It's tough for them to just live and authentically be themselves. So when you get to queer Black teens, it really is hard trying to figure out how you navigate spaces that, you know, aren't really safe, you know? And I think that's the biggest thing is like, I always feel like I want to tell, you know, Black teens, queer Black teens, like, be yourself. Like, you know, if you want to wear this type of clothes, wear it. If you want to wear this type of makeup, wear it. But I also have to think about safety. And so I hate that, you know, a lot of times the messaging, it just can't be as simple as like, be yourself and you can do it, because that's not the truth. And that's not like, safety has to come into play when we choose to be, I wouldn't say choose to be role models, when we become role models, when we're assigned, you know, this responsibility for our youth afterwards. I always, you know, have to think about their safety first. And so I always say like, listen, like, you know, I don't like to sugarcoat it. You know, I think if you can't be yourself publicly, be yourself privately, as what I always tell people, like, find moments and spaces where you can live your queer existence, even if it's just in your imagination, even if it's just in your journal, even if it's, you know, like, find moments where you can, especially if you cannot live them publicly in a safe way, because I would never advocate for a child to express themselves in a way that would get them killed. I just think it's so sad, like, that we live in that type of space. But I think for me, safety is always going to come first. So, you know, I always say, like, you know, kind of live it how you have to live it until you can live it how you want to live it, I think is, I guess, the best advice. Yeah, I mean, I lived many, many years not fully expressing who I was, out of safety, out of multiple various reasons. So I wouldn't just automatically be like, oh no, go ahead and do that. Like, no, like, listen, like, safety has to be first. And even for me, safety is still at the forefront. There's still certain times where I'm like, am I going to wear this type of outfit in this type of room? Am I going to do this in this type of space? Because I know what it could bring towards me. I think I'm a little bit more unapologetic now as an abolitionist. Like, I know, like, part of my duty is to abolish these things. And so sometimes I have to push past my boundaries because it's about them and not necessarily about me. But I would never advocate for a kid to think that they need to abolish the structure themselves. Like, that is part of what my work and the work of others needs to look like and do. So I just would advocate, again, like, you know, like I said, live how you have to live until you can live how you want to live. And, you know, just know that there are people out here fighting for you to be able to live how you want to live. And I'm just always going to advocate, though, for people to, like, you know, just express themselves as best they can in the most safest possible manner. And I will always also advocate, find your village. I think that's the other thing. Like, find a village of people that really will support you as you are, because they exist. And whether it's virtually, you find that village, whether it's, you know, through social media, you find that village, whether it's the few of you who are in that school who become each other's support system, or the aunt or the uncle that, you know, gets it, you know, like, find your village and really, really lean into them.
Yeah, I think like some of the things you mentioned are just vastly important, like safety, and especially since like now social media has become so much more than it was like 10, 20 years ago. Like, I definitely think it can really help young queer Black teens who are looking for that support network and who are looking for people who are like them, because there's just a plethora of people online, like millions and millions, and you'll definitely be able to find your crowd online if you can't find it in the space around you. And that's the beauty of the internet. And going on that, I know you also did an interview with GLAAD about how one of your inspirations was James Baldwin, and how his words resonate with you and also kind of society as well today in the problems that we're facing. And you mentioned that he was a blueprint and how now you want to become a blueprint for new Black queer writers. And as someone who is like also working on my own kind of like manuscript, what advice would you then give to young queer Black writers who are looking to publish fiction, nonfiction, like their own memoirs and their own thoughts?
Yeah, my advice to young Black queer writers is the fact that, the story has always existed, even if the story has never been told. So, we have a duty now, like we have an opportunity to tell the story. And so don't feel like you have to fit some mold to be able to get your story out there. Don't feel like there's like some special recipe. Come to the realization that your story may not exist in the world. And so you may be the first person writing that particular story. Like I said, it may have always existed and it may have been people like you, but they may have never gotten a chance to tell it. So realize that there's a lot of power in the fact that the story you may be telling may be the first of its kind. And so to, take heed to that and not feel like you have to read my story and think your story has to go a pathway like mine or sound like mine or be as conversational tone as mine or have language like mine. I think a lot of people get trapped in like trying to recreate what someone else did. I had no desire to recreate what anyone else did, from my book cover to the title to everything. And I love all of my peers. They're all amazing Black queer writers, and they all, I feel like I took pieces from all of them, to be who I am today. But I also knew like I'm George M. Johnson, and so the story I need to tell needs to be George M. Johnson's story, not my not George M. Johnson's story as told if I were trying to write like I was James Baldwin. You know what I mean? Like I'm not James Baldwin. And so I also encourage youth to realize like it's okay to look up to us, but you don't have to like try to follow our writing styles and our writing like be comfortable how you write, and be comfortable in the story that you're telling, and don't think it has to mirror, match, or sound like anybody else's story. And the most important thing is to write. I think a lot of people, they ask a lot of questions, but at the bottom line is like you have to write. At some point, you have to stop asking questions and you just have to write, whether the story is good, bad, or indifferent, because I look back at some of the stuff I wrote 6 and 7 years ago and I think it's terrible, but it wasn't terrible to the people who were reading it. It was needed for the people who were reading it. And I think, you continue to, the more you write, the better you get at your skill set. And so, yes, the biggest advice is to just write and put the story out there into the world. I think we see it happening all the time on like TikTok, IG, with all of the creativity. And I tell people the same way that, you watch people make a video that goes viral. Tell a story, and your story could be that next viral moment too. So yeah, just to make sure that they write and put the story out there in its totality.
Yeah, I think like the thing that you may also agree with is that the importance of like finding your voice as well, and like finding that thing that makes you kind of authentic and honest in your writing, like whether it's through fiction or nonfiction, like ensuring that you have that kind of essence and having that characteristic, I think would help relate your story to like a lot more people as well. And as we like talk about your memoir anymore, were there any particular parts of it that you enjoyed writing? And like, I know there was a lot of like joy and a lot of trauma, but were there any parts that you were just very excited to write?
Excited to write? Well, what are the parts I was excited to write? I think writing about my grandmother was cool. Writing about Nanny was definitely healing and cathartic. So, writing about her was cool. I think there were a lot more parts that were harder to write than that were, I think, fun to write. But yeah, I think writing about, and I will say writing about the childhood years, I think were kind of fun to write, because it was like, well, one, it was like how I remember things further back may not be how everybody else remembers them. And so I think like writing about your childhood gets very interesting, especially like when you think about like the things that we do as little kids, or as like, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, when we really don't know what the hell we're talking about, but we kind of have like inklings around phobias and isms because like we're pulling it directly from the adults around us to treat kids like that. And so it's like, yeah, so like writing about it was like fun because it was really like, I think coming to terms with the fact like kids have like their own world of like a, like, it's like, it's a cartoon called like Recess. I remember that cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And it was like how they had like their own king and they had like their own world. And so it was just like kind of like making me think about how like as kids, we really did have like our own world outside of adults with power structures and dynamics and all of those things. So it was kind of fun to write about that because I think people really took away from that. Like kids are processing, like at a very young age, we are processing. And the more adults keep away from us, the less we have when we go into the processing. So yeah, I think that those parts were kind of fun to write, the very young years when, yeah.
Yeah. And as we now like come to a close on our kind of little interview segment, did you want to talk a little bit about your next book, We Are Not Broken, and how, if in any way, your process has changed as you approached writing this next book?
Yeah, so my next book is We Are Not Broken. I actually have it came the other day.
Love that.
Yeah, you know, another memoir, but it this time focuses on the relationship that I had, as well as my younger brother, my two cousins, Roll and Rasul, that the four of us had with my grandmother and all of the wisdoms and things she taught us. So it's a book about Black boy joy, just all the things that Black boys go through, just trying to navigate society, as well as like the whole, you know, Black matriarch story and how grandmothers are really, you know, the backbone and cornerstone of a lot of families. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that book. I think going into this book, it was a little bit, like I said, it was a lot easier to write because All Boys Aren't Blue really taught me how to write a book. So, you know, I think, you know, any of the things that I felt I struggled with in All Boys Aren't Blue while writing it, I think I got right in this book. I think it was a lot more easier to write this book because I now knew what my style of writing is. I know what my tone is. I know what people like. So I know what I'm aiming for much better. Whereas All Boys Aren't Blue was just kind of like a blank canvas and it was just doing the best that I could to write a good story, you know, because it was really, really challenging. All Boys Aren't Blue took a while to write. I mean, edit after edit. This book did not take as long to write because I kind of knew what I was talking about, how to talk about it, how to do it, because I already had a body of work out there that I saw the good and the bad from. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to get this story out there. I think the two books work well together. I think they speak to each other. I think it's great because one book gives more micro, like because it's directly about me. I think this book gives more of a macro lens, even though it has like a lot of micro elements to it. So, but as a macro, it gives you the viewpoint of multiple people and how we all navigated each other, and you get to see everybody's point of views of things. So I think that's actually going to be the most interesting part of it, is because you get to meet each person individually, and so you kind of can see how their role, how your role in a family creates the family structure and dynamic. And so yeah, I'm really, really excited about it, and you know, excited for people to start reading it.
I'm excited because that does sound really cool, like the way everything's going to work, and especially when you told us about like how your approach to your second book was way easier than your first. I think it's definitely that reinforcing that ideal of like writing and writing and writing, because the more you write, the more you know about your craft and the process, and then the easier it kind of becomes. But editing is like a whole other thing that we can just put it down. But yeah, and finally, if once people go and read All Boys Aren't Blue, do you have any book recommendations as to if they want to get more educated or if they want to just know more of anything, and any resources that they can look to next?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, it was amazing to have a year of like really, really popular own voices literature for LGBTQ plus people. You had You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, which is doing amazing. You have Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar, which is doing amazing. And you also have, which is These are all three fiction books, but Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, which
love that one.
is also doing amazing and made the New York Times bestseller list. The two books I named prior were indie bestsellers, just like mine. So I think, I think like reading those type of books give you a lot of perspective on from different angles of like trans experience, queer experience, lesbian experience, non-binary experience. I think it gives you all of that. I think if you want to move into a little bit more adult Black queer books, you can look at No Ashes in the Fire by Darnell Moore, which is his memoir. You can also look at Hari Ziad's newest book, Black Boy Out of Time. Did I say that? Yes, Black Boy Out of Time, which comes out, you can actually purchase it now, but it comes out officially, I believe, March 1st. It comes out the same week as my UK. I know,
yeah.
Like the same week my UK launch is the same week that Hari's book comes out, which discusses their Black queer experience growing up, Hare Krishna and the religion of Hare Krishna. And so, I think that there are a lot of beautiful stories out there now where you can really start to read up on what it is like to exist at intersections of your Blackness when it has a different identity attached to it.
That is awesome. And like all of them sound like, I really did love Cemetery Boys when I read it a few months back. And so I'm really excited to like check out all of like the rest of the books that you've mentioned. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for giving me the time to interview you today. And hopefully the live reading tonight goes well of All Boys Aren't Blue. I saw the trailer of it and it just, I got the feels and I was just like, okay, like it's going to be great. But hopefully that all goes well and it's just going to be awesome.
I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm a lot of things. It's my first like production that I got to be an executive producer of. And I mean, I wrote the book, so it's all my words. And, Jennifer Lewis is Jennifer Lewis. She's iconic. And so like for her to even speak anything that I wrote, it's just a blessing. So yeah, I'm excited for everybody to see it, excited for everybody's thoughts on it, I think, because you never know. You never know how people are going to feel.
That's true.
But all I can say is the book has been out long enough that if people had beef with it, I think it would have came out. So I'm feeling pretty confident that people will appreciate this very, very artistic take that we took on showcasing the book. And it's free, which I think is most important, is during a pandemic to be able to find a way to give my content out for free is really the beauty of the project at the end of the day is, I know everybody can't afford a book. I know everybody can't afford an ebook or audiobook. So this is just some pieces of it, which I think have enough elements of it that it'll touch people and make people think and do some healing work, even just from what we were able to pull and give.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially like, as you mentioned, not many people have access to like the library and other resources. It's great that you're doing this for free and showcasing people like the work that you've done. And I'm just so excited for everyone in the UK to get to see this on March 4th. And it's just going to be awesome. And I just can't wait to see what everyone else thinks.
Me too. I'm excited.
Anyways, thank you for joining me, and I will catch up with everyone else in a little bit. And so yeah, I hope you really enjoyed that author interview. I had just so much fun interviewing them and just hearing a lot more about the process behind the book and getting a lot of life advice for myself as well. And so yeah, if you like this interview, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, be sure to click that subscribe button so that you're notified whenever I upload next. You can check out the links to go and purchase All Boys Aren't Blue in the description down below. And again, a massive thank you to Penguin UK for allowing me to conduct this interview with George M. Johnson. And if you want to check me out on any other social media platforms, I'll have all of them linked in the description down below for you. And so yeah, I guess until the next video, bye friends.